Hello and welcome to Capital Bop's live stream series for Freedom Summer 2020 in collaboration with the Blacksmiths, a collaboration of artists, educators, activists fighting for black equality and unity. We have a very, very special guest this evening, a very special musician with a very special ensemble. This is Nik Francis. And some of you might notice the location, so stay tuned. If you have any questions for our artists, please, in the chat, just go ahead and type in your questions as we go through the interview, and we'll get right to you. Enjoy.
Nik Francis on drums. Jamal Moore on raised percussion. And this is the Mojuba Duo.
welcome. That was a powerful set from Nik Francis with Jamal Moore right here on the Capital Bop Freedom Summer 2020 sessions. That's Jim Ryan in the background clapping. I want to give a big shout out to Timoteo Murphy and to Jamie Sandel for the wonderful tech work on these live streams. I want to also give a big shout to Lisa Marie Thalhammer and Bill Worrell of the founders of the DC Alley Museum, where this live stream is shot. The painting in the back features a painting by Bill Worrell of the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and it's a special location for Washington, D.C. in the history of the arts and in the history of the city in general. So we were very thankful to have been able to shoot this live stream from that location. And with that, I want to say what's up to Nik Francis. How you doing?
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, good. And Jamal Moore.
Peace, what's going on?
And we'll talk to Jim Ryan a little later. But a powerful set.
Thank you.
For those of us in the audience who are not familiar, please just introduce yourselves and just say something about your music, how you came to the music. Let's start there.
Okay. So I came to the music.
Wait, introduce yourself first.
Oh, yeah. All right. So my name is Nik Francis. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been playing music pretty much most of my life. I played mostly when I was a kid, many different instruments. Got some lessons in piano, some lessons in violin, mostly in classical music, but my interest was more in computer music. So I followed that for many years, self-taught, up until the point that I was about 25, at which point I started practicing drums. So my interest since then has been pretty much trying to incorporate all of my interests, which include science, music, and sound in general. So the music that Jamal and I make, Mojuba Duo, we try to explore as many sounds as we can. And in the context of a drummer, I mean, the drum kit, you can expand it in many different ways, and you can get sounds out of it that you wouldn't traditionally get if you just hit it with a stick, for example, rubbing it with a friction mallet or anything like that. So we try to find new sounds, try to find new ways to make sounds that we haven't done before in contexts that we can kind of vibe together on that. I met Jamal about a year and a half ago. We started playing at a show here, actually, I think, in Rhizome. Although I'd heard him play many times before. And, we hit it off. I mean, he started playing, and I really just got knocked out of my chair, and I just had to, recuperate and figure out what was going on. And then, he got into what I was doing, and we started playing together.
So when, Brother Jamal, same question. Just introduce yourself to our live stream audience and tell us about how you came to the music.
Name is Jamal Moore. Born into this music. Enculturated into this environment. Been playing this music since, as far as I can remember, maybe 2 years old. Family musicians, working in and out of spiritual work as well as regular social work or social drum circle and other arenas of different types of music. And I've been playing ever since. Formally trained with starting out as a percussionist, marimba, vibraphone, drum set. Eventually switching to woodwind, starting out with clarinet, moving eventually to alto clarinet, to alto sax, to flute, until I'm at now as a multi-woodwindist and things of that sort. And yes, again, meeting Nik, we mutually was on a bill together along with Jim Ryan and William Parker about maybe a year or so ago here at Rhizome. And it was my first time seeing Nik play. And I'm like, why is this guy like a hidden secret of DC? Who is this guy? Where has he been hiding? And we hit it off. Like I said, man, I got to bring this guy on some stuff we're doing. Perfect drummer. And brought him into a set. We got together and, like you said, it clicked right off with the music. They both have the same type of ideas, the same research work that we're doing, and thus we formed together the duet that we have now, presently, as Mojuba Duo.
Beautiful, beautiful. Once again, I want to remind listeners and viewers to, in the chat, if you have any questions for Nick or for Jamal or for Jim, or in general, if you have any questions, just in the chat, just type it in and we'll get to it later on. So, how have you experienced this music in Washington, D.C.? How have you experienced this approach to the music, and how have you explored that here in Washington, D.C.?
Experiencing this music in D.C. Well, it's the music itself. I think it's pretty clear when you listen to it that there's an extended amount of freedom of choice in this music. We do it because we want to, and we do it how we want to, and we move forward with the music. And I think that in this city, given context of changes and context of changes in demographics, changes in politics, and all that kind of thing, it's important for us to make this music present, make it visible, make it heard, because when people hear it, I think it changes them. I think it makes them question, what am I hearing? How does this compare to what I normally hear? Is this noise or is this not? And that sort of questioning, I think, leads to kind of healthy thought. And that's what we're all about, is trying to introduce healthy thought, introduce new kinds of thinking to people. And so in this city, I think it's particularly important. And I don't know, how do you, Jamal?
It's important here in D.C. It's important in Baltimore, where I'm a native from and live currently and work. I've returned back to now for 7 years. Globally, worldwide. Aesthetically, again, we're making transformational healing music. And I purposely want to say to the audience, those that are listening now, to remove yourself from a decolonized mindset of constructs called free jazz. We don't play free jazz. That is dead and done, and a category that was done over 50 years ago. We're moving into a higher realm of music right now to open your mind and to not be put inside of a box. So what we're doing, like I said, is feeding off the energy, dealing with a healing principle. We have many different subject matters that we deal with and go into a deeper realm to explore, to bring into a context of changing energy in the format that we're playing in right there.
Yeah, that's beautiful, and that's perfect. A segue to what this series is all about. It is about exploring the activism through music, exploring political, social, spiritual activism. Talk a little bit more about that, because that I think you're touching at the root of what your music is about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this music is more than just about the sounds that you hear. This music is about its connection to everyone who's played this music before us. This connection to things that are bigger than what we normally perceive on a day-to-day basis. This is about how do we connect to each other across time, across space. It's about love, and it's about connection. So we try to explore that deeply. And when we play sounds, we know that these sounds echo across all time and space. For example, I used to practice Aikido, and in that martial art, there's a practice of clapping at the end. And when you clap, the idea is that sound, it echoes into what we think of as nothingness, which would just be, for example, like the energy dissipating into kind of randomness of air molecules. But it's all of us go there in the end. And so the music sort of connects to what we think of as sort of ultimately what we become. And what we try to do is connect to that and share that with everybody, so that we can have a kind of concrete experience of that greater being. Hopefully we get there when we play. It doesn't happen every time, but that's our goal, And I think what's important is that we have that goal in mind.
And in these times, it's very important to have music like that. That's reaching for that. Do you have how do you feel about the context of this music in these times of COVID and of freedom struggle?
I mean, basically, if you want to get into spirituality, that's a whole number infinite, beyond 3-hour conversation. So to keep it very simple, beyond dealing with the basic elemental forms of metaphysics and quantum physics, going beyond that antimatter and things of that sort, we're talking about basically raising the vibration of humanity and healing, and moving through all the insanity that's taking place on this planet in a hierarchical spiritual format with a lot of negative, disagreeable energy, and helping humanity to raise themselves to the highest form of ether they can, mentally, spiritually, and physically, to be better people to the planet, respecting the laws of the planet, and then respecting the laws of the universe. To move beyond the constructs that we're going through right now that's on repetition of the same cycles of quote-unquote unjust of one particular species to want to suppress or oppress another species. Must remember, it's a famous quote by a great author and scholar and activist known as Dr. Malachi in New York: no one wins the war on racism. So to have a racist construct, you already defeated yourself already right there. We all are human. No one's going to win this war right there. It's not a planet. I mean, it's not a race thing. So in this music that we're dealing with right there, we're basically raising a higher altitude to heal and to bring you up to a higher vibration, you know. And not to get into the context again of the mainstream idioms that are taking place for those who need that but are looking for something outside the box. This will be a constant research doing right now, you know.
Yeah, talk about, if you can, talk about in the context of coming to this music and in spiritual healing, you know, talk about the community that this music comes from, or some of the, some heroes in this music, even. Where you learn to drum like that?
A lot of listening, but I mean, you know, somebody that comes to mind immediately for me, I mean, when I think about where I am on this tree, I think about people like Milford Graves, people like Rashid Ali, and also going back to, for example, like Dennis Charles in Cecil Taylor's early work. For me, for example, speaking about Milford Graves, is his connection to the body, thinking about the heart and its rhythms and how that relates to how you might play music and how that relates to general vibrations in the world and in the universe, and how that affects us, as human beings, and how we move through the world and deal with other people. That sort of thing greatly impacted me in terms of how I thought about what I should be doing. Should I just be trying to play complex music because it's intellectually challenging? Is that enough, right? It wasn't enough. This music, particularly playing the drums, is physical. And I mean, you saw me sweating in that video, right? So when I look at people like about Professor Graves and look at Rashid Ali playing, I mean, they're putting energy into the drums, everything they can. And I don't think they're doing that just because it's a kind of a challenge. They do it because it does something. It does something to the people there, and it does something to themselves, and that stuff is positive. So when I saw that, I thought, I got to do that. You know, I got to try that. You know, initially you start with emulation. You try to figure out, okay, well, I heard him do this on this album. How can I make that sound? And then eventually you find out, well, there's many different ways to make those sounds. So, you know, initially I started just trying to inject noise into what I was doing. And when I say noise, I mean the ideas of like independence with limbs, but more like correlations with limbs. For example, I heard Milford Graves talk about this arm might have a conversation with this arm, and this arm is angry, and this arm is sad. And it took me a long time to think about what he might mean by that, but it has to do with, I think, an understanding of multiplicity of self, and that we all contain multiplicity, and trying to express that and not contain it, but allow it to be. And so those sort of ideas sort of were the driving force behind the technique, right? The technique was kind of a more or less, not afterthought, but it comes after you know what you want to do in terms of the sound and how you want to affect people. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we're gonna go back to the video, but Jamal, thank you for joining in on this. Where can we get more information about you, and follow, where can the listeners and viewers follow you?
Jamal Moore 19 on Instagram. S-A, A-N-K-H, Jed, D-J-E-D, @gmail.com, and the same name used for Facebook as well. We also have a Bandcamp page via Nik Francis on topology.com.
And your group is called Mojuba
Duo.
Mojuba Duo. Great. And once again, if you have any questions, feel free to type it in the chat, and we'll get right there. And with that, we'll go We'll continue on with the Freedom Summer live stream session right here with Capital Bob.